So last week we read how death called the subtle body of Satyavan out of the physical body. The luminous Satyavan arose. And then he starts to move. He feels the impulse of the path. When you leave the body, there's a path that has to be followed. And he feels that. So Satyavan moves away, and behind him, death, like a shepherd who's herding one stray soul away from his, that's wandered away. It has to go along the right path. And Savitri follows the god. And silently she plants her feet where Satyavans have trod. At first, in a blind stress of woods she moved, with strange, inhuman paces on the soil, journeying as if upon an unseen road. Around her, on the green and imaged earth, the flickering screen of forests ringed her steps. Its thick, luxurious obstacle of boughs besieged her body, pressing dimly through in a rich realm of whispers palpable. And all the murmurous beauty of the leaves rippled around her like an emerald robe. But more and more, this grew an alien sound, and her old intimate body seemed to her a burden which her being remotely bore. Herself lived far in some uplifted scene, where to the trance-claimed vision of pursuit, soul presences in a high, spaceless dream, the luminous spirit glided stilly on, and the great shadow travelled vague behind. Still with an amorous crowd of seeking hands, softly entreated by their old desires, her senses felt earth's close and gentle air cling round them, and in troubled branches knew uncertain treadings of a faint foot wind. She bore dim fragrances, far callings touched. The wild bird's voice and its winged rustle came as if a sigh from some forgotten world. Earth stood aloof, yet near. Round her it wove its sweetness and its greenness and delight, its brilliant swathe of well-loved, vivid hues, sunlight arriving to its golden noon, and the blue heavens and the caressing soil. The ancient mother offered to her child her simple world of kind, familiar things. But now, as if the body's sensuous hold, curbing the Godhead of her infinite walk, had freed those spirits to their grander road across some boundaries intangible bar. The silent God grew mighty and remote in other spaces, and the soul she loved lost its consenting nearness to her life. Into a deep and unfamiliar air, enormous, windless, without stir or sound, they seemed to enlarge away, drawn by some wide, pale distance from the warm control of earth and her grown far. Now they would escape. Then, flaming from her body's nest, alarmed, her violent spirit soared at Satyavan. Out mid the plunge of heaven-surrounded rocks, so in a terror and a wrath divine, from her eerie streams against the ascending death, indignant at its crouching point of steel, a fierce she-eagle threatened in her brood, born on a rush of puissance and a cry outwinging like a mass of golden fire. So, on a spirit's flaming outrush borne, she crossed the borders of dividing sense. Like pale, discarded sheaths dropped dully down, her mortal members fell back from her soul. Rosa? Yeah?
At first, in a blind stress of force, she moved, with strange, inhuman paces on the soil, journeying as if upon an unseen road.
So she's following Satyavan. She's placing her feet where his had trod. And this is her experience. She feels that she's moving and she can feel this pressure of the trees around her. She moved in a blind stress of woods. She can't really see where she's going. She's just following where Satyavan has set his feet. And so she's treading on the soil, but it's as if she's treading with subtle paces, strange, inhuman paces, not the way one would normally walk on the earth. And it's as if she's journeying on a road which can't be seen. She can't see where she's going. She's just following Satyavan's footsteps. Okay, Chandra.
Around her on the green and image dirt, the flickering screen of forest in her steps. It thick,
Luxurious.
upstart of work beside her body pressing gimli grow in a rich realm of
whispers, palpable,
palpable, and all the murmurous beauty of the leaves rippled around her like an embroidered robe.
So here she is. She's moving on the earth, the green earth. But he says imaged earth. It's as if she's not seeing the earth as we normally see it. It's more like a kind of picture to her. And around there are the trees, the forests surrounding her steps, and they are flickering, moving. And she can feel as she moves, she feels the branches of the trees. She has to press through. Boughs are branches. So those branches of the trees are like an obstacle to her. Thick, luxurious, there are so many of those branches. They besieged, it's as if they're attacking her body as she's pressing dimly through. And she feels all around her as if this realm, this country of whispers. And she can feel those whispers. Perhaps it's the wind passing through the leaves. And she can feel the leaves surrounding her, covering her almost. All the murmurous beauty of the leaves. The leaves are making a sound, murmuring as they move, and that's clinging round her as if it's a dress that she's wearing, an emerald robe, that lovely, intense green colour of the leaves. So this is not exactly the normal physical experience. She's in contact with her subtle being, or her subtle physical being. She has to be in order to see Satyavan like that and to follow. But she's still in her body. Mihong, you would read?
But more and more this grew an alien sound, and her old intimate body seemed to her a burden which her being remotely bore.
So as time goes on, this sound of the forest, very familiar sound of the forest, begins to sound strange, an alien sound. And her body begins to feel different to her. This body that we are so used to our bodies and how they feel. But now she's feeling that it is something heavy, and that her true being, her inner being, is carrying this heavy burden, but it's somehow far away from her, remotely. She's centered in her inner being. Bevel.
The devil lived far in some uplifted scene, where to the trance-claimed vision of pursuit, soul presences in a high spaceless tree. The luminous spirit glided stilly on, and swayed, shadow traveled, veiled behind.
Yes. So this is how the body seems heavy, and it's being obstructed by the forest that she has to pass through. But the center of herself is living far away from all that, in some uplifted scene on a much higher plane. And she's following, she's pursuing. So in that movement of pursuing, of following Satyavan, she's in a kind of trance. She's focused on him. And that's what she is seeing. A trance-claimed vision of pursuit. She is seeing only the luminous spirit, Satyavan, gliding stilly on, very quietly without movement. He's moving onwards. And behind him is that great shadow travelled. It's vague, like a cloud behind him. And that's all that she can see. And it's as if it's a dream. No? Those are the only presences in this dream, this high scene which she is seeing with her trance-claimed vision. Alice.
Still, with an amorous crowd of seeking hands, softly entreated by their old desires, her senses felt earth's close and gentle air clinging around them, and in troubled flashes new uncertain treadings of a faint foot wind. She bore dim fragrances, far winds touched, the wild bird's voice and its wings rustling came as if aside from some forgotten world.
So the senses, that's how we are aware of the physical world around us. We feel the warmth of the air on our skin. We hear the sounds around. So in the same way, her senses are feeling earth's close and gentle air. It's as if all the things that the senses usually interact with, the feelings, the sounds, the sights, as if they have little hands, and though they are touching and calling out to the senses, be aware of us. An amorous crowd of seeking hands. The old desires of the senses are still entreating them, calling them. So she can feel the air, and she can feel the movement of the branches that's caused by a wind. She can sense the wind. There are scents, fragrances, and she can hear the sounds and voices of birds, wild bird's voice, even the sound of its wings. But all these sounds and feelings seem to be something very faint, like a sigh from some forgotten world, a world that she's left and is no longer familiar with. Sarojini?
Stood on yet near, around her it were its sweetnesses and its gleannesses and delight, its brilliance source of well-loved vivid hues, the sunlight arriving to it golden noon, and the blue heavens and the caressing soil.
ancient
mother offered to her child her simply world of kind, familiar chants.
Yes. So earth. Earth is the ancient mother. The ancient mother of all of us in our physical beings. No? So she's at a distance, aloof, and yet still near. And so it is, the earth is weaving around Savitri, offering her all its sweetness, its greediness and delight. Suave, it means pleasant and smooth, no? Of the colours, shining colours, the well-loved, vivid colours of the forest. The sunlight arriving at its golden noon. So here, from time to time in the poem, Sri Aurobindo lets us know what time of day it is, what time of year it is. So here he's following the traditional legend which says that Satyavan died at noon on the hottest day in the hottest month of the year. So just at noonday this is happening, with the sun at its highest. And Savitri feels the attraction of the blue heavens and the caressing soil, the gentle touch, familiar touch of the earth. Earth, the ancient mother, offered to her child, to the physical being of Savitri, her simple world of kind, familiar things, all the things that we appreciate about earth, nature. Sergei.
But now, as if the body's sensuous hold further the Godhead of your infinite walk, had freed those spirits to their grander road, across some boundaries intangible bar. The silent God grew mighty and remote in other spaces, and the soul she loved lost its consent, nearness with the light.
Yes. So because there's that awareness, the senses speaking to the body, it's as if that has allowed the spirits of Satyavan and death to move on, to move away from her to their grander road. It's not anymore an earthly road, it's in a much larger plane. And it's as if they've gone across some boundary, some frontier, some borderline, which couldn't be felt, but they've gone further away from her. And she becomes aware of that God becoming bigger, mighty, and remote, far away, in other spaces, not earth spaces. And the soul of Satyavan, the soul she loved, also no longer feels near to her life. It's as if it has chosen to move further away, consenting, is agreeing. It had remained close to her, but now it is moving further away. Andreas?
Into a deep and unfamiliar air, enormous, windless, without stir or sound, they seem to enlarge away, drawn by some wide, pale distance from the one control of earth, and have grown far. Now they would escape.
Yes. So she's aware of them moving further away into a deep and unfamiliar air, another atmosphere altogether. enormous, huge, without any wind, without any movement, no stir, no sound. And they themselves seem to be getting bigger. They seemed to enlarge away. They move away. Usually when things move away from us, they get smaller. But they are getting bigger. As if they are being attracted, drawn by some wide, pale distance, off into some sky, emptiness. They've grown far away from the warm control of earth, from the control of the senses, the physical body, and they've grown far away from her. And she feels that they are going to go too far, that she won't be able to keep up, that they are going to escape from her. Mila.
Then, flailing from her body's nest, alarmed, her violent spirit showed us suddenly. Our lead out with the flanks of heaven's surrounded rocks, so in a terror and a wrath divine, from her
eerie,
strings against the ascending death, indignant at its crouching point of speed. A fierce sea eagle threatened with her brood, born of a rush of puissance and cry, outwinging like a mask of golden fire.
It's such a wonderful picture. I think it's a picture which perhaps comes from Kazakhstan, where the young men in their teens, they go out to steal young eagles from the nest. And then they will tame those eagles and hunt with them. I think that's the national sport or activity of Kazakhstan and the Kazakhs. So I don't know how they do it. They must climb up these heaven-surrounded rocks, plunging very steep, precipitous rocks, to where the she-eagle has built her nest. The nest of an eagle is called an eyrie. So, of course, when the mother eagle sees somebody coming with a spear or a hook, perhaps, a steel hook, then she's terrified and she's furious. In a terror and a wrath divine, she flies up from the nest against whatever is coming, this ascending death. She's indignant at its crouching point of steel. It makes me think of a hook or something like that. It's coming closer, and that's what she attacks. A fierce she-eagle threatened in her brood, her nest and her little chicks. And when she flies up, she wings up, she's so powerful. It's a rush, a speedy rush of puissance, of power. And she gives a loud cry. It's a very, very special cry, the cry of the eagle, outwinging like a mass of golden fire. So Sri Aurobindo gives this as an image for the way that Savitri's spirit, full of power and wrath divine, flames up out of the nest of the body. It leaves the nest, alarmed. Shilpa.
So on spirits flaming outrush born, she crossed the borders of dividing sense, Like pale, discarded sheets dropped dully down. Her mortal members fell back from her soul.
Yes. So in the same way as that she-eagle, so carried on this flaming outrush of spirit, Savitri crosses over the borders of dividing sense, the senses and the sense impressions that separate us from the subtler worlds. And her spirit flames up and the body falls down like pale, discarded sheaths dropped dully down, as if it's old clothes that you are dropping off. Her mortal members, the parts of her that are subject to death, the physical parts, they drop down. Savitri leaves her physical body. And then she's in a special in-between state. Praveen.
A moment of a secret body sleep. A trance knew not of sun or earth or world. Thought, time and death were absent from her grasp. She knew not self, forgotten was Savitri.
Yes. So even the inner body is somehow asleep or in trance, and it's not aware of the surroundings, not aware of the sun, the earth, the universe. Nothing, thought, time and death, this is not in her consciousness. She's not conscious of herself. She's not conscious of Savitri at all. She's only conscious of one thing. Joel.
All was the violent ocean of a will, where lived captive to an immense caress, possessed in a supreme identity, her aim, joy, origin, Satyavan known.
That's the only thing that she's aware of. If she's just a violent ocean of will, a vastness of will, and in it is held captive to an immense caress, a gentle embrace, possessed in a supreme identity. She's identified with Satyavan. He is her aim, her joy, her origin. That's all that exists for her in that moment. Varadarajan.
A sovereign cushion in her being soul. She kept her at a rhythmic part. At different speed. One loud, another flat. This treasure saved in the earth of space.
So he's her sovereign, he's her ruler, but she's holding him prisoner in the very heart of her being, and she feels him beating there like a heart. He is herself, but still there's some difference. She can love him, she can hold him, she can surround him, envelop him. He's a treasure saved from the collapse of space. Everything else has collapsed, but she's holding on to him alone. Uday.
Around him, nameless, infinite, she saw her spirit fulfilled in his bright
Spirit.
spirit, rich with all time, as if love's deathless moment had been formed, a birth with ingenuity, white ship.
So this continues the same idea. He's a treasure. So he's a treasure like a pearl that's found in a shell. But this is the shell of eternity. And this pearl is the pearl of love's deathless moment, that eternity in the hours. So she feels her being surging like a wave or a sea around him. And she has no name. She's also infinite. Her spirit fulfilled in his spirit, rich with all time. So it's a wonderful moment of spirit union, of oneness beyond time and space. Ganga Lakshmi.
Then, out of the gulfing sea of trance, her mind grew stretched to light streaming with you. Her vision and awake once more to time, returned to shape the meaning of sin, and live in borders of the sea and me.
So she comes out of that state of trance and of timelessness, and her mind wakes up again. It's aware of all this light and color around, and she's aware again of time, of the passage of time, and the mind can shape the lineaments of things, the outlines, the appearances of things, and it can live in borders of the seen and known. Coming out of trance, she comes back to a more, he says, to a mind vision. Can live in borders of what can be seen and known by the mind. Shamala.
Onward, the three still move in her soul's scene, as if passing through fragments of a dream. She seemed to travel on, a vision shape, imagining other losers like herself, like them imagined in their lonely sleep.
So, and this in her consciousness, in her soul scene, all three of them are moving onwards. Satyavan, Death, Savitri. But it's as if it's all happening in a dream, and not even a continuous dream, fragments of a dream. She's traveling on, and this is like she feels herself like a shape that's just a dream form, or a vision shape, and she's imagining other dreamers or musers like herself. They are also dreaming and imagining her in their sleep. Gomsun.
Uncrossed, unreal, yet familiar, old, like cracks over unsubstantial memory. Since often tremors never lived in, played pastel on heating, forgotten words.
So this too is like something that might happen in a dream, that you feel yourself moving, so things are floating past you, scenes which you can't really grasp. They're unreal, and yet in some way they may seem familiar, that you have known them long ago. They are like clefts of unsubstantial memory. A cleft, it's a narrow gap in rock, or like a narrow canyon. So like deep places in memory, and there's something familiar about them, but you can't remember where you know them from. These seem to be scenes that she's often passed through, often traversed, but she's never stayed in them for any long time. She's passed through them like this before, and they're moving quickly. She's moving quickly, so they are fleeing away, fleeing past her, not paying any attention to her, going somewhere. She can't remember where they might be going to, forgotten goals.
In voiceless regions there were travelers, alone in a new world where souls were not, but only living moods. The strange, hushed, weird country was round them. Strange, far skies above. A doubting space where dreaming objects lived within themselves, their one unchanged idea.
Yes. So she's aware of the three of them as travelers in voiceless regions. It's very quiet, alone, in this new world where souls were not, only living moods, feelings. But she is aware of scenery, a strange, hushed, weird country was around them. Weird, it means very strange, ghostly, maybe something a bit frightening, grey and somehow enchanted in an unpleasant way. And there are high above, strange, far skies. It's a space, seems to be full of doubt, and the objects are living, even the things that are there are living their own particular dream, isolated, living within themselves, their one unchanged idea. Lila.
Weird where the grass is, weird the treeless plains, weird ran the road which like fear hastening towards that of which it has no stir, fast, phantasmal between pillared conscious rocks, somber and high, gates brooding, whose stone thoughts lost their huge sense beyond in giant night.
So there's grass, but very strange, weird grasses. Plains, vast empty spaces, but no trees. There's a road. They are following a road. And this road seems to impel them in a certain direction. Sri Aurobindo says, like fear, hastening towards that of which it has most terror. It's hurrying towards something. It can't help it, although it's terrified by what it's moving towards. There's something terrifying about that movement of the road. They are following that road, and it passed between high pillared rocks, but these rocks are conscious. And the road is like a ghost, phantasmal. These rocks are dark and high, and they form as if a kind of gateway, brooding, as if these conscious rocks are thinking something. They are stone thoughts, but we can't see where their stone thoughts are leading. They are lost in night. There's so much darkness surrounding them. Lost their huge sense beyond in giant night. This gateway seems to lead in to a great darkness. Rosa. It's a long, difficult sentence. Count. Let's take it slowly. Yes.
Enigma of the inconscient.
Sculpturals.
Sleep, symbols of the approach to darkness, hope, and monuments of her titanic rays, opening to depths like dumb, appalling
jaws
that wait a traveler down a haunted path, attracted to a mystery that slays. They watched across her road, cruel and still sentinels. They stood of damp necessity, mute heads of vigilance and silence, gloom, carved muzzle of a dim, enormous wall.
Yes. So again, it's an amazing picture. These gates, these pillared conscious rocks. Sri Aurobindo says they are symbolic of the riddle of the sleep of the inconscient. That sleep which is sculptured into rock, into stone. They are symbols of the approach, of the entrance to ancient darkness, the primeval darkness before evolution begins. No? Monuments of her titanic reign, this huge, powerful reign of inconscience, of night, of darkness. And these gates are opening up to deeper places. They open up like jaws going to swallow, like the jaws of an animal that are going to swallow you down. No? Dumb. They don't speak, they don't make a noise, but they are appalling, terrifying. He says these such jaws, such gates might wait for a traveller who's following a haunted path, a path that is enchanted. That traveller is being attracted to some mystery that will destroy him, a mystery that slays. That's the character of these terrible rocks that are watching across the way that Savitri has to go, across her road. They are cruel, they are still, They stand like guardians of dumb necessity, of what has to happen. In a sense, on a certain level, the death of Satyavan is a necessity, and these are the guardians who are going to make sure that it happens. These are mute heads. They are watchful, vigilant, and they are sullen. They are bad-tempered. They are not full of goodwill at all, sullen. Gloom, darkness. And they are rocks. So they are like, he said sculptural. It's as if they've been shaped. Here he says carved muzzle of a dim, enormous world. The muzzle, again, it's like the jaws of an animal. A dog or a bear has a muzzle. It's this part of the face. So these are these. It's as if this world is a fierce, predatory animal, dark and terrifying. So that's where we'll stop today, at the entrance to that dim, enormous world. At first, in a blind stress of woods she moved, with strange inhuman paces on the soil, journeying as if upon an unseen road. Around her, on the green and imaged earth, the flickering screen of forests ringed her steps. Its thick, luxurious obstacle of boughs besieged her body, pressing dimly through, in a rich realm of whispers palpable, and all the murmurous beauty of the leaves rippled around her like an emerald robe. But more and more this grew an alien sound, and her old intimate body seemed to her a burden which her being remotely bore. Herself lived far in some uplifted scene, where to the trance-claimed vision of pursuit, soul presences in a high, spaceless dream, the luminous spirit glided stilly on, and the great shadow travelled vague behind. Still, with an amorous crowd of seeking hands, softly entreated by their old desires, her senses felt earth's close and gentle air cling round them, and in troubled branches knew uncertain treadings of a faint-foot wind. She bore dim fragrances, far callings touched. The wild bird's voice and its winged rustle came, as if a sigh from some forgotten world. Earth stood aloof, yet near. Round her it wove its sweetness and its greenness and delight, its brilliance suave of well-loved vivid hues, sunlight arriving to its golden noon, and the blue heavens and the caressing soil. the ancient mother offered to her child her simple world of kind, familiar things. But now, as if the body's sensuous hold, curbing the Godhead of her infinite walk, had freed those spirits to their grander road across some boundaries intangible bar, the silent God grew mighty and remote in other spaces, and the soul she loved lost its consenting nearness to her life. Into a deep and unfamiliar air, enormous, windless, without stir or sound, they seemed to enlarge away, drawn by some wide, pale distance from the warm control of earth and her grown far. Now they would escape. Then, flaming from her body's nest alarmed, her violent spirit soared at Satyavan. Out mid the plunge of heaven-surrounded rocks, so in a terror and a wrath divine, from her eyrie streams against the ascending death, indignant at its crouching point of steel, a fierce she-eagle threatened in her brood. Borne on a rush of puissance and a cry, outwinging like a mass of golden fire. So, on a spirit's flaming outrush borne, she crossed the borders of dividing sense. Like pale discarded sheaths dropped dully down, her mortal members fell back from her soul. A moment of a secret body sleep. Her trance knew not of sun or earth or world. Thought, time and death were absent from her grasp. She knew not self, forgotten was Savitri. All was the violent ocean of a will, where lived, captive to an immense caress, possessed in a supreme identity, her aim, joy, origin, Satyavan alone. Her sovereign, prisoned in her being's core, he beat there like a rhythmic heart, herself, but different still, one loved, enveloped, clasped, a treasure saved from the collapse of space. Around him, nameless, infinite, she surged, her spirit fulfilled in his spirit, rich with all time, as if love's deathless moment had been found. a pearl within eternity's white shell. Then out of the engulfing sea of trance, her mind rose drenched to light streaming with hues of vision, and awake once more to time, returned to shape the lineaments of things and live in borders of the seen and known. Onward the three still moved in her soul scene, as if pacing through fragments of a dream, she seemed to travel on, a visioned shape, imagining other musers like herself, by them imagined in their lonely sleep. Ungrasped, unreal, yet familiar, old, like clefts of unsubstantial memory, scenes often traversed, never lived in, fled past her unheeding to forgotten goals. In voiceless regions they were travellers, alone in a new world where souls were not, but only living moods. A strange, hushed, weird country was round them, strange far skies above, a doubting space where dreaming objects lived within themselves their one unchanged idea. Weird were the grasses, weird the treeless plains, weird ran the road, which like fear hastening towards that of which it has most terror, passed, phantasmal, between pillared, conscious rocks, sombre and high, gates brooding, whose stone thoughts lost their huge sense beyond in giant night. Enigma of the inconscient sculptural sleep, symbols of the approach to darkness old, and monuments of her titanic reign, opening to depths like dumb, appalling jaws that wait a traveller down a haunted path, attracted to a mystery that slays. They watched across her road, cruel and still. Sentinels they stood of dumb necessity, mute heads of vigilant and sullen gloom, carved muzzle of a dim, enormous world.